Today we're going to be talking about equations of lines. We have two different forms that we can use to write an equation of a line. So let's take a look at the first one. Our first form is slope-intercept form. So this is talking about if we have the slope and we have a y-intercept. So when it says intercept, it's talking about a y-intercept. Okay. So if we have those two things, then this is the easiest form for us to write the equation of a line. When you're doing this, there are going to be two numbers that you're going to be putting in here. You're going to be plugging in m and you'll be plugging in b. The y and the x are always going to just stay as y and x. So for example, if I gave you the slope of a line is 3, and the y-intercept, which is usually going to be written as a coordinate, as 0, 5, okay, then I would be ready to fill these into my equation. Okay, so y is always going to stay just as y, and then I'm plugging in slope, right? And a lot of times this is going to be a fraction, but it doesn't always have to be. Remember that if it was 3 over 1, right, go up 3 over 1, then that slope would actually be the whole number 3. And we have our x, which is always just going to stay as x. And then plus our y-intercept. And the y-intercept is the y value here. And it does have to be, if they're giving you an intercept, it has to be the y-intercept. So if we were to go graph this point, it'll go over 0 and up 5. So that is on the y-axis. So I know that this intercept is fine, and that would be an intercept of 5. And this is the equation then of my line. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of things that throw people off and a couple of common mistakes that people make. Okay, the first is if you're given an x-intercept. People frequently don't notice if they were given an x-intercept. So if this was let's say 2, 0, and you were to go graph that, that would be over 2 up 0, which is on the x-axis instead of the y-axis. So this is an x-intercept, and it isn't helpful for us to be able to write an equation in this format. Okay. Other common mistakes, people forget that if your y-intercept is a negative number, they forget to put their negative number in there. And so you have to be sure that you're really careful about that. So if this had been negative 5, right, 0, negative 5, then you would need to put that in here, and it would be plus a negative 5, and you would rewrite your equation as y equals 3x minus 5. Finally, the last thing that throws some people off is, what if instead of 3, what if you had been given 1/3? Okay, so you have a fraction instead. People are always really confused about how to write that. So you have a couple of options. You can write the 1/3 in front of the x, where this is its own, it's its separate number, and then the x comes next. Or you can write it the same thing if you have 1x over 3. Sorry, what this example is, minus 5. Okay, this is fine. The only place you can't put that x is in the denominator. Okay, so it cannot be in the denominator. Okay, so let's look at our second form. So this is our second form, and it is called point-slope form. And that's because you need a point and a slope for this form. So let's list a point over here. We're going to say that this point would be 3, 5. And let's give a slope. And this slope is going to be 3, well, hold on, I don't want to copy 3, sorry. Let's do 6/7, just so we have completely different numbers. Excuse me. Okay, so when we're ready to write this one, we are again going to have a y and an x that don't change at all. Okay, those stay the same. We have a slope here that's going to be plugged in for our slope. And then we have a point, which has an x-coordinate and a y-coordinate. Okay, and those are going to be plugged in for x1 and y1. Okay, it's really important that when you're done, you still have one x and one y, and so that's the x and the y that do not have the little subscript. Those are the ones that stay as x and y. So when we get started here, we have y minus y1, which is 5, equals our slope, which was 6/7, times, and then you have to have those parentheses, that's really important, x minus x1, which is 3. Okay. So if all they ask you to do is just to write it in point slope form, then you're done at this step. Most of the time, however, they want this to be turned into slope-intercept form, which we talked about just a moment ago. So in order to do that, you're going to have to do two things. First of all, you have to distribute your slope through the parentheses. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that first. And so the left side of the equation stays exactly the same, and we get 6/7 x minus, and that's going to give you negative 18/7. And if you're not sure about this second multiplication, the 6/7 times the negative 3, you can always use your calculator, or you can do it by hand. It doesn't matter to me which one, but just keep in mind, you want to be sure that you're accurate there, because otherwise it's going to change your whole answer in a minute. So fractions, sometimes it's helpful to have our calculator. Okay, from here we have one more step. You have to add the 5 that's over here. Okay, and again, especially when we are adding with fractions or subtracting with fractions, it can be really helpful to go ahead and have a calculator available. And so in this case, don't forget that we have a negative 18 and a positive 5. So when you combine those, you are going to get 17/5, and that is positive, because when you turn your 5/5 into a fraction with the common denominator of 7, then you're going to get 35/7, which is larger than 18/7. So that is a positive number. So just be sure that you're paying really close attention to your signs there, especially when you type them into the calculator. Okay. And so this is your answer in slope-intercept form. Be prepared, there are going to be lots of fractions in this section. Okay, so don't be afraid of the fractions. We have two other special kinds of lines that are going to show up. The first one is if we have a horizontal line. Okay, so it's easiest to think about these as a graph. So let me sketch us out a graph here. So we have a horizontal line here, and the easiest way I can tell you to write these equations is going to be this. If it is a horizontal line, it's crossing over the y-axis. Okay, so all of the numbers on here are going to be are going to have the same number for the y-coordinate. So it doesn't matter which point you choose, they would always have the same y value. So we'll say that that number is 3. Okay, your x value is going to change depending on which coordinate you're looking at, but the y value will always be the same on a horizontal line. So that means that the equation of my line is always going to be y equals, and it's going to be whatever this y value is. Okay, so if they tell you that you are drawing the equation of, the equation of a horizontal line, then you are looking for the y value. They may give you that by giving you a graph, and you have to go find the y value on there, or they may give you some points, and you have to find the y value that way. Okay, so a horizontal line crosses over the y-axis, which means that its equation is always a y equals something. The other lines we have are vertical lines, and so vertical lines go up and down, right? And they are always going to cross over the x-axis, which means that if we choose any 2 points on here, that the x value will be the same, okay? So we're going to say on here, our x value is 7, and then on these, the y value will change every time, okay? So we're looking here and we're saying, okay, I have my x values are the same. That means that these have to be x equals a number. And so I'm looking again at what that number is, and it'll be the same for any 2 points they give you. And that's going to be the equation of my line, okay, is x equals 7. And so anytime you have a horizontal or a vertical line, they have an unusual slope. If you remember when we talked about slope in the last section, slope for a horizontal line is always 0, which means it cancels out the x, which is why we have, oops, didn't show up, which is why we had a y equals a number here. Okay, guess it's gone. For vertical lines, our slope is undefined, and so you can't plug the word undefined into either of our other equations that we learned. So you're going to have to remember an undefined slope. It actually ends up getting rid of your y value, and that's why you only have an x equals a number. Okay? I hope that you've enjoyed this and had a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to seeing you Monday. Thank you.